Hello. Well, today's subject. Have you acquired your own land for free? And do you know how to do it? When I came to Scotland 10 years ago, I came from a set lifestyle with set belief systems, and I had no concept of a world outside of the council estate that I lived on. So to me, everything was about legal and lawful and moral all being sort of together. When I came up here, I discovered a different way of life because I met different types of people. So over the years I've met lots of millionaires up here with their own businesses and their own land and everything else, and they've told me they've bought it with their own money. But I've also met people who have acquired land and not paid a single penny for it. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So when I talk about anybody being a success, it's a personal thing. Success can be anything. If you've walked away from a life that was miserable and you're now living a happy life, and it doesn't matter what it's doing, if you're happy, you're successful. That's the end of it. So it makes no difference how you live, where you live, or who you live with. It's all down to personal enjoyment and self-satisfaction. But when I came up here, I went into a different world. The one that I was brought up in was, this is how we live, and this is what we do, and this is how we think. And people like me who thought outside of the box were seen to be a bit of an oddball. But when I say think outside of the box, we didn't actually know what outside of the box was. So we didn't even know ourselves. It was just, I don't believe what I'm told all the time. Something doesn't feel right about stuff, but I can't put my finger on what it is. When you leave your little comfort zone and you go on a journey and you start to meet lots of different people with different backgrounds and different perceptions of the world, then it opens your mind as well. And so one of the reasons that I started doing vlogs 10 years ago was because I wanted to prove or disprove that you can change your life completely and be something completely different. And for somebody who's doing it, or they've done it, or they've always been like that their whole life, they can't understand what I'm talking about. But for people who are left behind, if you like, in that place where they say, I can't change anything about me, this is what it is, I have to just make the most of it and just accept what it is. That's why I did the vlogs. I did it for them because I wanted to challenge their belief systems as well as my own. So one day I was on a road trip, and this is going back about 8 years ago now, and I came across this little derelict house, and I looked at it and I thought, I love that house. The potential of that is just unbelievable. Once it's done up and that could be absolutely gorgeous. And the garden was all overgrown with weeds, and it was just a complete shambles. And I thought, oh, I wonder who owns the house. And I was talking to my friend, and he said, well, I guess it's just one of those things, the landowners just let that go, and they've probably built another house somewhere else on the land. So we just let it go. And then one day I met somebody, and this was a guy who I met in town, and he told me a story. And it was a story of how he claimed his own land, and he did it for free. And when he was talking, I couldn't grasp what he was on about, because it just felt weird, because we was never taught this. And he said it's called lawful acquirement. And he said, what I do is I go around on little road trips, and when I see little pockets of land here and then, I think, does anybody own that section of land there, because it's derelict and there's nothing happening there? Or a little beaten up house somewhere, or an old croft, or anything like that. He said, if I feel drawn to it, I either get the address of the place, or I get the coordinates from the map. And then what I do is I go to the council, and you go to the land registry, and what they do is they charge you £7, I think it's in Scotland. And what they'll do is look at the registry and tell you if somebody owns that land. Now, he said it's a gamble, and it's like a percentage is more not in your favour, because something can look like it's been abandoned, but it's actually still owned by someone, or it's part of somebody's land. So he said 7-8 times out of 10 I fall onto nothing. It doesn't come of anything. But he found a piece of land near a loch in Scotland, and he did the coordinates thing with that and went to the council, and they said, oh, that's no man's land. So no man's land doesn't belong to the council or the Crown yet, or to anybody else. So what he did is he put a fence up around the boundary, and it had to be the exact coordinates and not go over that. And then he put a sign up saying under offer and put his phone number on there. And then he got a PO box sent to that address, or a post box, so it had an address. And then he put an old caravan on there, but he didn't live in it straight away. So what he did, he said, I just left it and carried on looking for more land. And he gave it another like 12 months, not living there, but he waited to see if anyone would phone his number and go, what do you think you're doing? Putting stuff on my land, or that belongs to so-and-so, or we just didn't register it in time. He said, so 12 months went by, then he made it 2 years. And after 2 years, still no one had put in any complaints. So that's when he put on a static caravan and moved in. And he's been there now, oh gosh, about 17 years. And he's now got 3 static caravans on that site, and he's made it bigger and bigger, but again, doing it through the land registry, a little bit at a time. Now, from what he's told me, is after 12 years, if you haven't been thrown off that land in 12 years by anybody, or no one's come forward to claim the land, then it automatically becomes yours, but you have to prove ownership. And that is why he got the PO box and the address sent there, and a post box, so he got post delivered, and the post is always stamped with the date. And so he did all these things to prove he's been there for all those years. Now he's been there for 12 years. During this time, when he got the address sent there, the council tried to charge him council tax, because they said, if you're living on the land, you have to pay tax. And he said, I'm not paying it, because that is another unlawful tax, and it's not a lawful requirement to pay it. So he taught me a lot of stuff, and he said, I'm never paying council tax. So he had a battle with them that went on for a couple of years, and in the end they just quit and they've left him alone. And he said, I deal with my own rubbish and I take it to the tip myself once every so often, and I'll take it on my truck and I'll just take it all down, and I also recycle my own things and everything. And he said, I don't need the police, fire engine, because I look after myself, and I don't require their services, and I don't use the education system, so that's what you're actually paying for. And he said, I keep my place in a good condition, and I don't hurt nobody else, I'm not hurting no one, I'm not paying it. And he's got away with doing this. Now, because of my conditioning, because of my education, I thought he was a criminal. And I told him, and I said, so you're breaking the law? And he just laughed and he went, oh my gosh, I am not breaking no law, this is not illegal. And then he went on to tell me that, you know, in London there's so many like derelict properties and slums. A lot of the landlords come and get those doing the same thing, the lawful requirement, which is they just take the property and they'll put somebody in it into this slum place and charge them rent, and the rent will be covered through DSS. As long as it's an address, you can claim it, and they can act as a landlord. And then if somebody comes along and contests it and says you can't be in this place, they'll just evict them, but they've already made rent from them. And so this guy went on to tell me that there were loads of stories of people who he knows personally, and it's hard to do it, but you can do it. And that is to just get your own land, but you've got to make sure it's registered with the council. Now, I was reading a story about a guy who lived in a tower block in London, and this is going back a few years back now, and he was a council tenant, and for whatever reason the council hadn't been charging him rent, even though he was on the books. And so he lived there for something like 12 years without being noticed. And then one day, out of the blue, somebody twigged on in the council office that this one flat wasn't paying any rent. So they went round to him and said, you owe us 12 years worth of rent because we've investigated. And it went to court. And when it went to court, it got thrown out. But it didn't just get thrown out, he also got the flat. Because he'd lived in it for 12 years uncontested, it became his property, and he'd been having his mail delivered there and everything else. So it was his flat, so the council had to let him keep it. So he'd lived there 12 years rent free, then he owned it as well. We're not taught in state schools what our rights are. We're not taught about the law. We're not taught how to be adults in an adult world, and we're not taught how to navigate through situations with business or life itself and finances. So what we're taught is constant lies. But the other people in the private schools are taught the truth. And a lot of these people go straight into like what we'd call high paid careers, like MPs, doctors, bankers, people, CEOs of companies, because they're shown how to be businessmen and they're shown how to get the money. What we was taught is that these people were all dodgy dealers, and they do dodgy dealings, but they know how to do it because they evade the laws that we keep. Because most of them are not actually illegal. There are loopholes in everything. So when I lived back home, I lived on the outskirts of the council estate, and there was a house behind me, and we had what you called no man land behind the gardens. So it was like this big patch of land that nobody owned, but we all presumed it belonged to the council, so we left it alone. But this family took a piece of it and extended their garden right back like 30 feet or even more, and turned it into their garden. And they lived there long enough, and it became part of their deeds on their house. So when they sold the house, it got sold with that land as well. And I thought they were dodgy and they were breaking the law. But when I found this out, I found out there wasn't, because it was called no man's land, which means nobody owned it. And so it wasn't an illegal thing to do. So most people who I know have got some patch of land around them somewhere, either on the boundaries of their home or somewhere close, that doesn't belong to no one, and it could be utilised by you and the people. And you can even use it to do things like put car boot sales on, or do an allotment, or anything. Just plant trees, do anything with it. But we're not taught that there are such a thing as no man's land. Now, from what I've read, if you own your own property and you have no living relatives and you don't leave a will, then at some point that your estate will go to the crown. So it'll be owned by the king or the queen of the country. But you can intercept that by getting in there first and putting claim to it, and then it becomes yours over time. So this is what I look at. And sometimes when I go on road trips, I will do this, and I've only done it 3 times now. And I've put in a submission to the council, to the land registry, and said, I've got an address or coordinates of this place, I want to know if somebody owns it. And on 3 occasions they came back and said, yes, somebody is registered. So then you leave it alone. But that's not to say it's not going to happen in the future. This guy's done it, and he does it all the time. He's got loads of land now. And they're only pockets of land. I'm not talking acres and acres of land. I'm talking enough to put on a couple of caravans, or fence it off and do a garden there, or anything. Just something nice and simple. But there are places out there like that all over the country. So if it's something you're not aware of, it's worth knowing. Because if you've got, say, like I had, a garden that goes to public land behind the garden, and you find out it's called no man's land, you can make claim to that land and make your gardens bigger and things like that. So it's all those little things we're not taught that benefit us. And we're not taught anything that benefits us. We're only taught what to do, what to think, what to feel and what to say. But people who know, because they've been educated with the truth, know exactly where to get land, how to get it for free. A lot of these MPs and business people, they're doing this all the time. They're just taking land for free and then laying claim to it and then benefiting from it in the long run. So I'll leave it there for now. If you've done this, or if you know anybody else who's done it, then make some comments on this, because I think it's important we find out what our rights are and we educate each other on this, because there's so much I need to learn. And if I find out anything that can benefit someone, I will talk about it, because I want to see people thrive and do well, because it's just getting boring now, watching people shrink down into themselves and getting less and less and less out of their money and out of their environment, when we should be thriving on it. And I personally think that we should all lay claim to the land, because it belongs to us, and no one should have more than anybody else. You can have what you want on that land and do what you want on it. So some people will never do nothing with it, and some people will put a mansion on it. It doesn't matter. But the point is, we're lied to about this land that sits there doing nothing, and we're told it doesn't belong to us, and when it does. So I'm going to leave it there for now, and I'll see you in the next one.